Hey everyone, I want to go over the examples that we did last night in class where we created some pivot tables from these discipline data, and from that built out some bar graphs. So you can practice both those skills. So these are data from PowerSchool of one school's discipline from an entire school year. This was the 2018-2019 school year. We have a number of students here, and it's longitudinal, so it tells us the date, some information about the student themselves, as well as the type of infraction and which teacher, in some cases, issued that. So I wanted to create 3 tables that we would then create bar graphs from. So we're going to do our pivot table examples and then create bar graphs. And that'll be the incidence number by race ethnicity, incidence number by behavior type, and the incidence number by month. And we'll do those here on this worksheet. Okay, so as always with the pivot table, we want to select all of our data. So I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom here. You can see we have about 530, I think 534, yeah, 534 examples of discipline here from the school year. And then we start with our pivot table. So data, pivot table. I'm going to do it to an existing sheet, and I'm going to select this graphs worksheet, and I'm just going to paste these tables right below here. So I will tell that I want it here on this graphs tab in A6, click OK and create. So for this first one, I want the racial ethnic group on the row. So I'm going to add that here, and that was the offender race. And on the values, I want to add just the count, okay? Now it defaults to sum, and if you remember, that count variable is just counting 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to the number that we have. But if we switch this sum to count A, it's just going to count the unique, if it has any content in it, it'll give it a 1, and that's what we want. And so now we know that there were 400, and let me zoom in. That's pretty small, huh? Let me zoom in here so you can see that. There are 461 Black or African American students that had an issue of discipline, 16 Hispanic, 13 2 or more races, and then 14 white. And it's ordered this alphabetically. So we might want to order this instead of by race. We can order this now by count and do this in descending. So I'm just making those adjustments over here in the pivot table editor. But now that we've done that, we can create an image from it. So the table is definitely something we could report out, but sometimes it's nice to also have graphics. So we're going to create a chart. And so I did insert chart, and notice that Google here defaults to a pie chart, which isn't a great visualization for what we're trying to do. In fact, it'll be quite a bit better if we have a bar chart. And so in this case, I'm going to do a column chart. We'll move this over a little bit. Let me zoom back out, trying to just navigate this. Okay. And now, having done that, we can change. So we could do like behavior or incident. Yeah, behavioral incident by race, ethnicity. And this is 2018-19 school year. And maybe we change this offender race to race, ethnicity, and this would be a number of incidents. Okay, something like that. So we're just retitling. You could change colors, you can resize, however you want to do it. We might want to add labels. To do that, you could just click on these bars here, and then these options pull up. And if you scroll down, there's this data labels tab, and that'll add the numbers. And that's kind of nice to see the numbers. So everything reflected in the table is now reflected in our bar chart. Okay, so that was the first one. Now I want to do another one, which is incident number by behavior type. So I'm going to go back to my data. It's already selected. So I can go data, pivot table. Again, I want to do it to the same sheet. I'm going to select here right below. And we'll click OK and create that. And now the same options pop up, but this time I want, instead of on my rows, my race, ethnicity, I want to do this first behavioral code. So I'm just going to drag that in. And now you can see all the different types of codes that were assigned each behavior. And for my values, I again want to just do the count. And instead of the sum, we want that count A, that unique count. Okay. And like we did with race ethnicity, I want to sort this not by behavior, so it's in alphabetical order, but I'd like to sort this in descending order by the count. So cutting class was the most frequent. Now we have a lot of behavioral codes. We talked about this in class. So, I'll just grab the first 7 or so as representative. And that looks like 6. So I'll do one more of skipping school. So I'm just going to grab these and then say there's kind of a cutoff around this 12 and below. And so to do that again, we'll insert a chart, just having selected those 2 columns. I want to select this, move it over. Okay. And then like the chart we did above, I think this one actually, instead of a column chart, we're going to do this horizontal bar chart so that we can read these a little bit better. And we can even, if you click on them, adjust some of the font sizes. We can make them a little smaller, 10, so you can read all of that. And then we could change again. So incidence, right? Number of incidents. You could change the title here as well if we wanted to. I won't do that editing on this, but you can do that, right? You can clean it up. But here we can see that a lot of our incidents, we talked about this in class, though cutting class is pretty cut and dry. We know when students aren't there when they're cutting. These more discretionary decisions of insubordination, inappropriate language, disrespect, disruptive behavior, those are a little more discretionary. So it might be a conversation, if this were my school, with my faculty around how we're interpreting that, what constitutes insubordination, et cetera, make sure everyone's normed. Okay, so we did that one. Now the third one we want to look at is incident number by month. So we'll go back again and do our pivot table. We're going to do it to our existing sheet. We'll click back on this graphs tab and we'll just paste it right below where we have the last one. And now in this case, I want to do the incident date on my rows. And now this is going to create every unique date is going to be populated here, but we'll fix that in a minute. And then we also want the count. So it's the same sort of setup here. And we don't want the summary, but we want the count A. Okay. And now what we can do is if you just click in any of these cells within the pivot table and right click, you can have this option create pivot date group. And having done that, we can select any group. We could do this by a year. Obviously, we don't need that, but by month seems to make sense. And so now we have each of the months, January through December. And like we did in class, that might be nice to, instead of doing it by date, to do it by the count in a descending order. So now we have our most frequent months, so our highest months of February and October and April are kind of the top 3, and then the other months sort out. So we can now select each of those months in the count, insert our chart, and Google defaults to a bar chart, which looks great. This column chart, and we'll move it over out of the way. And of course, if you want now, you could make it look pretty, or you could add, like we've been doing on the others, these data labels to give you the number. But now, you have a visual. If you were to create and edit these and clean it up a little bit, you have a visual that you could take to your faculty and staff where they can see, okay, February and October, those are months where we tend to have higher rates, whereas September, that sort of first full month of school, December, where we're not in session that long, May, same type of thing, we're ending school. Those tend to be months where we have less behavior. Now, the question in all of these discipline data is around reporting. Do we see that it's actually there's less behavior, or are we just reporting it less during those months? So that's a conversation for your faculty. That's a conversation that's kind of looking at other data, both what they report and also what you observe, just to get a sense of why we might be seeing certain months at higher rates than others. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. We've combined now 2 skills. We're creating some graphics from some pivot tables, and we'll use this data again to do some other skills.